Welcome to Codex History of Video Games. My name's Tyler Osby.
And I'm Mike Coletta. I wasn't expecting the fist bump.
I was really feeling the rave,
He was doing good. It was really good. I
going
liked
for
it.
This week we're going to talk about Hook on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah. And so it's been a busy week for me. I've been out of town and I've always wanted to talk about this game on the podcast and I just kind of forgot. And then this is a perfect week to do it because it's a game I actually played on my Miu Mini relatively recently. And once again, we should just preface it this way. I thought this was going to be simple. Okay, it's just a game that came out on the SNES. Not a big deal. Turns out it came out a lot of places. And we're just going to talk today about the SNES version that also came out on Sega CD, Genesis, and Game Gear.
Sega CD, too.
Yeah, and the Sega CD version might actually be the best way to play it.
I bet it's got a sweet soundtrack.
It does. And it also has, we'll get to it later, but it's got some more extra stuff to it. Ooh. So, but this is like a childhood spotlight game for me. This was a game that I always remembered and I really loved it. Did you ever play the Hook game for SNES?
And actually, I never even saw the movie Hook until 2 years ago.
Oh, well, that's also a movie that I love personally.
It was good. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it held up.
Yeah, it's fun, but it's like one of those movies that a lot of people trash on, but it's a children's movie. And so I liked it. Yeah, they're all eating the paint. It's weird. Anyway, yeah, I love it.
But that's fine.
Yeah, so this is about Hook, the 1991 fantasy adventure movie. That's what this is about with Robin Williams.
Robin Williams, yeah.
And Julia Roberts is Tinkerbell, which is crazy. Dustin Hoffman is Captain Hook.
He was in it too.
Bob Hoskins is Shmee. Glenn Close has a
Bob
boo
Hoskins
box
of Super Mario fame.
Yes, he's in this movie. It's all the world's a circle. Everything's connected. Okay, so it's beautiful. But if we're not gonna talk about the arcade game, which I didn't know, which sounds cool, a 4-person beat 'em up. That sounds pretty cool for a Hook game. And then we're not going to talk about the point and click adventure game that came out for it. We're just talking about this classic action platformer from the time when all the favorite childhood movies had action platformers. So we're going to get into it with Grime Facts, like we always do. Okay. There are 2 developers for this game, one for Sega and one for Nintendo. So I believe I'm pronouncing it right. Ukiyote is the SNES developer. And then Core Design is the Sega CD, Genesis, Game Gear developer, I believe. And the publisher for all the games, though, is Sony ImageSoft. And the release dates are as follows. So you have a September 1992 release for the SNES version. The Sega CD version actually came out, but for the Genesis and Game Gear versions in March or April of 1993. I looked through the citation notes and I couldn't find out which specific one it is, if it's March or April. It doesn't really say. So that's what we're going with. In the EU version of EU version, I don't know if this is correct or not, but it's the September 1993 was the Genesis and the Game Gear versions. I've messed up my notes already. But the systems that it came out on, including the recommended best way to play, there is an NES and Game Boy version of this game. This is the last time we'll be talking about that because it's trash. And I mean that
they're so bad they're not worth talking about.
They're so bad they're not worth talking about. They're different games. They're not good. And you can see in the ratings area when they talk about these games, they just got destroyed. They're just not unique. But meanwhile, the SNES, the Sega CD, the Sega Genesis, the Sega Game Gear versions are all kind of the same game, and they all have the same kind of look, and they're really wonderful, and I love them. The best way to play, we're just going to say it. I play it on my Miu Mini Plus.
Which version?
I recommend you emulate it. I play the SNES version is what I was playing. The SNES version and the Sega CD versions are the most... the biggest versions. They have the most levels at 12 levels. So that's the most complete version of the game is the SNES or the Sega CD. Genesis, I think, has 11 levels. Game Gear only has 8 levels. So I mean, if you have a Game Gear and you're a fan of a Game Gear, you can certainly play it. But I'm just going to say you're going to get less game for your money. Okay. Number of copies sold. No sales data for this game. I looked all over, couldn't find it. I don't trust VG charts, but even VG charts had nothing. So we're going to move on. Genre or gameplay style, action platformer, pretty standard. Average time to complete from howlongtobeat.com specifically is 1 to 3 hours, depending on how nerdy you are with getting all the collectible drops and getting the highest score.
I
So
have a question about that. Is that 1 to 3 hours if you know what you're doing? Like, I just brought this game home from the store and I can beat it in 3 hours? Or is it like 3 hours after you know everything in the game, you beat it in 3 hours?
I think it is. There's a thing about difficulty we're going to get to. This game is considered relatively easy
Okay.
by retro game SNES standards. I would say if you rented this game, if young childhood Tyler rented this game, well, actually, you might not have been. Was 1991? Were you? Or were you?
I mean, I was alive.
You were alive, so I don't know. 1-year-old Tyler could beat this game in 3 hours, probably.
Okay. Because like games in that era, like Super Mario Brothers, like or Sonic the Hedgehog, I spent dozens of hours on, but a single playthrough to complete it doesn't take that long, right? But getting to
Yeah.
that, but you will die a lot getting to the point of being able to complete it in 2 hours or whatever.
Well, I'm
Anyway,
going to say this. I'm going to reiterate it again. But this game has unlimited continues, and it
great.
doesn't restart you at the beginning of the game, so you
Okay.
can just play it through.
Game's easy. We love it.
Game's easy. We love it. Okay. And it's fun and it's cool. It's neat. I'll tell you why. Okay. So the Metacritic score, there isn't a Metacritic score, but I'm going to get kind of into the weeds here with the reviews for a very specific reason because I found something that I was like, wow, that doesn't happen anymore. So the all game gave the Sega version a 3 out of 5 stars. Mean Machines gave the Sega version a 69%. A SNES, the Nintendo Power, gave it 13.8 out of 20. Kind of weird to rate something out of 20, but I kind of liked it. Did
Is that
Nintendo
one?
Power always
Maybe
do
it's
that?
one of those aggregate ones where it's like 5 people reviewed it and they each get 4 points or something.
Maybe it's for Nintendo Power. I don't know how
Hmm.
Nintendo Power actually reviews stuff. This actually made me think
I
we
don't
should
remember.
do a history of video game reviews
Oh,
and
that's a
how
good
it was
idea.
done because I
That's a
think
good
it's kind of a
idea.
cool idea. Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
kind of changed so much when we've kind of all figured out the out of 10 or out of 100 system nowadays, I think.
Which I
But it,
got beef with.
yeah, we got beef. We talked about that before, but there's a lot of other weird things they did out there. So the magazine Superplay gave it a 72% for the SNES version, Electronic Games 88%, and Force gave it a 81%. So pretty good for the the SNES version, okay for the Sega Genesis version. But what I really wanted to talk about is I was reading these old reviews for this game just to get like out of curiosity. So it's a lot of like magazine screenshots that people have like scanned through. All Game, the review site, has a section for reviewing documentation.
Like
So
instruction manual?
yes, they would review the instruction manual, which I feel like is a thing I had no idea about that just kind of is gone, right?
Yeah,
It's no
well,
more.
instruction manuals are kind of gone.
Yeah, it's just a gone thing. So I just want to let you know the instruction manual for this game got a 4 out of 5 from All Game,
Huh.
and it's important. And I think if we find more stats on instruction manuals, I'm going to pull those.
I wanna petition Jeff Keighley to add best instruction manual to the Game Awards next year.
I think that would be a good idea. I think that would make it a much more fun time for everyone involved because I want to know about the documentation. Okay.
Me too.
So,
Best wiki for a game.
best wiki for a game. I mean,
Eh,
game guides team. You and I have talked at length about game guides and how I hate a video guide. You hate a video guide. Give me text. I just want to read it and keep my place. I
Yep.
don't want to listen to someone talk. It's like when you get a recipe online and there's 3 paragraphs about how this recipe has changed their life. I'm like, I don't care. Just get me to the.
Growing up in small town Alabama,
Mhm.
we
It's a
loved this kind of recipe. Just give me the recipe. I just want to know
yeah,
how to make a tuna melt.
yeah.
What's
When
your
it
tuna
comes,
recipe?
just give it to me. I just don't bore us. Get to the chorus. Here we go.
Yeah.
Let's get it going. Okay. So, all right, let's talk about the story of this game. Mild movie spoilers for a
For a
30-year-old
30-year-old
movie.
movie.
Yeah. Okay, everyone. I think this is your chance. If you haven't
It
watched,
is a good movie, but
it's a
not because
great
the
movie.
story is great.
No, it's a great movie for like little moments in it. So the story is Peter Pan grew up to be a real adult and he works in finance and he does terrible things to financial systems and stuff like that. He's not a good guy, honestly. He's just not a good guy, right? That's what and Robin Williams plays him. You go back to visit Wendy, who is now hella old, and the kids, your kids, Peter Pan's kids, are kidnapped by Captain Hook. Spoilers, still around because Neverland, no one ages. All right.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
then you have to remember, you being Peter Pan, how to be Peter Pan so you can save them from Dustin Hoffman, who is Captain Hook. Yeah, Dustin Hoffman though. I like to think it's actually just Dustin Hoffman
It's just
in real life.
he's like,
Yeah,
I would have gotten away with it.
if it weren't for that meddling Robin Williams in green tights.
That
So,
meddling grown up kid.
so the story is mainly told in the game between levels, and they do cutscenes with text on the screen in the SNES version. And I actually think they do a really good job of it too. Like I've seen, because we've all kind of seen cutscenes like this in like JRPGs where it's just like the white text that goes across explains. But I
Mhm.
feel like they actually have like little animations and they do little things. Like there's a moment, again, spoilers for an old show and game and movie where Rufio dies. Okay.
Rufio.
Exactly. And in the game, they actually do a really good job of how they play it off. Like a sword flies in from off screen. It's like Captain Hook's sword. It's kind of cool. Like they actually did a really good job explaining that in this
All right.
little medium here. I like it. So
Cool.
that's how they do stories. And let's get into the gameplay. This is going to be most of the episode because I'm going to tell you right now, Tyler, the development info on this game is very lackluster. Okay. I have like a couple facts and that's about it. So we're mainly going to talk about the gameplay and why I love this game so much. It is a 2D side scrolling platformer, but it has some unique features. There are only two weapons in the entire game: your basic dagger, which you start out with on level 1, which has no range, just like a dagger. You got to like kind of be careful with how you swing, right? And then you defeat Rufio in the first boss, and you get the golden sword that all the Lost Boys want, the golden sword. And that is interesting because it's a sword that has a ranged attack where it shoots something like magic or pixie dust. I don't know what it's shooting, but it shoots it across the screen and it does a ranged attack. And it's pretty baller. Okay, it's what you want to use for this. And the game you're playing here is if you get hit once, you drop the golden sword. And if you drop the golden sword, the game becomes much, much harder than it would have been before. So you really kind of get rewarded for doing a perfect run with no damage taken.
Okay.
And
Yeah. It's easier if you stop getting hit. If you
and I can
get
tell you,
good.
like, if you don't know it, like, it is a lot of that old school video game. I got to memorize where things
Mhm.
are kind of thing, which I kind of like because it kind of rewards you for knowing the game.
Mhm.
And it's a lot of that. And if you know where the enemies are going to be, you can kind of cheat a little bit, and I'll get to that in a bit. So damage is scored with leaves. So you start with 2 leaves, and you can collect up to 4. And every time you get hit, you lose a leaf. And you also have like a max number of leaves. So you start with 2 as your max. If you find other leaves on the map, you pick those up, and then it's like another heart, kind of like in Zelda. And then you can also grab food items to heal those leaves up as well as you go around the map. It's in, yeah. So the max life is 4 leaves, which is kind of it's kind of not a lot, but the game gives you other stuff as well too. So because you can unlock extra lives, and in the game you use the score to get extra lives. So at the end of the level, you get a score and you get a new life every time you hit 100,000 points, which sounds like a lot, but every time you pick up one thing, it's like 1,000. So, and you
Mm.
get a bonus for like your time and your health and not getting hit and all that stuff. So it can kind of like add up really quickly. So every 100,000 lives you get a life. There are also max life leaves and secret pickups for like extra lives throughout levels and stuff. And that's just through memorization and knowing the game. So standard fare for all this stuff though. Now here comes the big mechanic and the thing that I remember the most about this game, and that's your Peter Pan, you can fly.
Of course. There's a whole song about it in the
There's a
movie.
exactly. So if you're a Peter Pan game, you can't fly. Like, what's even the point, right?
Yeah.
So in the game, there are these little Tinkerbells floating, and they're spewing pixie dust. I don't know how else to say it. Spewing pixie dust, right? And if you stand near them, you have a fly meter up top, and it fills up. And then you can use that to fly across the level. You will run out of flight though, and you will fall to your death if you do this wrong. So there are other Tinkerbells throughout the menu, but you can do some pretty crazy stuff. Because when I say fly across the level, you can fly anywhere. Like you can go up, you can go all over the level, and there's a lot of secrets, and there's a lot of ways you can just straight up like cheese the level. Like the third level where you're in this like cliff area with boulders and guys throwing big rocks and like running on barrels and stuff. If you get the Tinkerbell in the first spot, go all the way to the right and just go straight up, you can skip the rest of the
Oh,
level.
wow.
You just go out of it and just leave.
Do all levels have like a cheese way to do it? if you know
No,
it?
not
Okay.
all, but
I kind of
some
like
do.
the idea of like every level having like if you know exactly what you're doing, you can cheese your way through this level, but you have to know the level. You have to have played the level so much to know it enough to
Yeah.
be able to do that. That seems kind of cool.
Yeah, I kind of like it because it's rewarding you coming back and knowing the game.
Hmm.
So that the flight mechanic is the thing that I remember the most because you when I remember playing the game as a kid, I was like, you can actually like fly, and he does like moves where he like animates and goes through the air and like shoots faster. It's kind of cool. So it's a really fun mechanic for this game. It kind of makes it stand out above the other platformers of the time. There are I'm gonna call these gripes. Okay, these are
Okay.
my gripes, and these are some are from reviews and some are from me personally. The first two are from reviews though. The really big one is there is not a password save system for this game.
There's
Okay,
no save system at all then.
no save system at all,
Oh
no
wow.
passwords. But the other side of the coin that like most of the reviews mention is you do have unlimited continues, so
Okay.
you could do the thing where you just die and then pause it and walk away and come back and try to like we all see these kids where you like turn the TV off but you leave it on and you're like, okay, we'll see if it goes.
That's
So
the first time I beat Donkey Kong Country. First
you
game
did
I
that
ever
way.
beat. I did it that way because I got to like the second phase of the last fight, and my parents were making me go to bed or something, and so I turned the TV off, but left the Super Nintendo on.
Big brain moods from Tyler right there. I
Yep.
love it.
My dad would have been real mad if he found out. Sorry, Dad.
Sorry, Dad, but now you're finding out years and years later, and he is still very angry at you. How funny
I'm
would
gonna go
be?
home for Christmas. He's like, "You're grounded."
He's like, "You're grounded. I'm not talking to you about for the whole Christmas break because you left the Super Nintendo on 20 years ago." Yeah. So the password saves is a bummer. That's a pretty big one, right? The other biggest complaint, and this is the biggest one by far, is how Peter Pan moves. Peter Pan. When you picture Peter Pan, Tyler, who do you think Peter Pan? What do you think he moves like?
I think he moves. He's pretty like small, skinny. Probably moves pretty quickly. Like,
Hmm.
quick on his feet. Got
Hmm.
mad hops. He can probably jump pretty high.
Hmm. You
Is
got
that
one
not
part
it?
right. You got the jump high part right.
Oh, okay.
The fast, not fast at all.
No,
He kind of
slow guy.
floats. He's a little
Ooh.
floaty in
Okay.
this game. So you move pretty slow. You don't run. You like walk, and when you jump, you kind of like float up. I mean, we now have a visual medium, so you can watch me do this weird thing with my hand if you want. I'm going to use this notebook as Peter Pan. The picture of this green notebook is Peter Pan. Okay, he like
Okay.
jumps up and he'll like hover at the top for a bit, and then he'll come down. It's like he's like moonwalking almost, like he's jumping on the moon. It's
Kind of
really
like,
strange. He's
is it
super.
like Luigi in Super Mario Brothers 2, where he
Yeah,
does a little feet flutter and
kind of. There's no feet flutter. He just kind of floats and hangs up there, and then he comes back down. So he's really
mm,
floaty, and people did not like this because you expect Peter Pan not to be like a lot of comparisons I saw in the reviews I read were like you expect it not to be like Sonic the Hedgehog, but at least a little better than that, kind of
mhm.
thing. But I don't mind it because you can jump really high and you do like a flip that kind of gets you over certain branches to jump extra high, which is nice. But it is the big gripe that most people had with the game is that he's Peter Pan and yet he moves so slow. The This is the personal gripe for me, and it might actually be a technical thing. Every time you beat a level, it shows you an overworld, and you're like, oh, sweet. There's going to be a Super Mario World esque overworld in this
Mhm.
game. It just shows it to you, goes down the path all the way to the end, and then cuts to the next level. And it does that every time. It goes the whole path every time. Just the camera shows you the whole path, and it goes to the next level. I think it's for loading purposes. That's their loading screen. But it seems
Usually Super
weird.
Nintendo games didn't like need that though. That's
It's just weird because
hmm,
they're showing you an overworld that you can't explore. It makes you think there's going to be secrets in the game, like secret levels, and there's not. Like
hmm.
I actually went into this thinking there was some sort of bonus stage, and I couldn't find one. I could have sworn there was a bonus stage in this game where you're flying around, and there's just not a bonus stage. So I'm like,
Huh.
okay, whatever, I guess. Um. Anyway, so that's kind of my big gripe was the weird the map screen. The enemies, though, this is where the game's pretty shines. I think the enemies are really diverse. You fight your usual like wildlife, like spiders, snakes, and tigers and bats. And the tigers breathe fire, but that's pretty cool. But with the pirates, they do like all sorts of weird things. Like they'll throw boulders, or they'll pilot hot air balloons, or they'll like throw explosives at you. They have like swords and shields, all sorts of different stuff with the enemy types. And The cool thing too is there's boss fights in the game, and they don't happen every level, and they're just kind of fine, but they usually involve shooting some sort of weird pirate 3 times, very Zelda-esque. But
Okay.
the pirates always have these weird contraptions that involve explosives and balloons because pirates, apparently, and we all know pirates, they love explosives and balloons,
They
right?
sure
That's like
do.
that's their thing, you
Every
know?
pirate I've talked to, they're like, "More explosives and balloons," and then they say, "R."
Yeah, please more explosives and explosives and balloons are us is what they want to go to. They want to go there every time. Okay, so there's also a random pirate that's kind of a mini boss that forms, and he is a pirate riding a giant bird, but he's holding like a knight's lance. So what I'm trying to say is they have some creative license with it, and I kind of love that they did what they did. So big ups to them for making the pirates all have like weird personalities and stuff. The levels are different, as I said before, depending on the version you play. I'm going to reiterate it one more time here. The Game Gear version is the smallest with 8 levels. The Genesis is next with 11 levels. And if you want the most levels, and in my opinion, the best experience, I would play the SNES or the Sega CD version to get those full 12 levels. The levels actually also go across a variety of biomes. So that's kind of the thing I remembered the most about this game. Is 2 things I remember most: the scenery and the music. And we're gonna get to the music in the end. But the scenery is really vibrant and bright, and it's especially just really popping off on the SNES version. And the art style is just really, really well done. It's just really good pixel art, which I feel like they kind of mastered it and they were like really good at it at this point. And it's smooth, it looks crisp. The animations for like the Lost Boys are like just the right amount of cartoony. Because I'll remember the guy, the Lost Boy that would like he was the fat guy. Because every 90s TV or movie thing had like a fat friend. And do you
Mhm.
remember the scene where he would like fold his legs up and like roll? Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Unnaturally, he like clearly like puppety legs, lifts his legs over his head and rolls. He's in the game as a bad guy in the
Does he
first
roll around?
and he rolls. And I'm like, I love that. So that's the thing I remember the most is like you go across like mountains and cliff faces. There's ocean levels. That's the thing too. You can swim. Like you can swim and you can fly. There's no like death pits for water. It's like if you fall into water, you're now in an underwater section of the level, which is
Oh,
really
okay.
cool. It's kind of like because Donkey Kong Country kind of does the same thing, right?
Mhm.
Where it's like you're in the water and now you have this thing where you're swimming around and you fight piranhas instead of fighting like the wildlife above, and there's
Mhm.
secrets down there and stuff. There's also a cool quicksand level that you have to sink in the quicksand to get to secret areas, which I really like. There's another one, and it's probably like my favorite level, I would say, is it's in a cave and there's these little candle things that follow you and they're enemies. And if you hit them, the lights all go out. So it's like dark and you can't see the platforms anymore. Like you don't know where you're going until you wait for them to come back on. And so and that's the only level with like horror elements. There's like skeletons in the level too. So it kind of like is like a scary, spooky
Spooky.
level for kids. Yeah. And I like that level a lot. The other one too that I like is in the ocean level. It's like you in the ocean and you're dodging these barrels that are explosive kegs coming from balloons because pirates love balloons and explosives. And if you go too low in the water, a mermaid comes up and forms a platform for you to jump on, which is like really cool too. So it's like a really they actually cared about the gameplay in this platformer game to make it so it wasn't, yeah, it's easy, but it's also not annoying. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
some are brutal. Like some of these games were brutal, like
Mhm.
absolutely like really hard. And I think Hook was the perfect level for like a kid like me, or if someone like, for example, if you don't play these kind of retro games, you want to give one a try, get a emulator and play Hook. I would say that's like a fun way to do it, and it's just really a well done game. I was gonna ask an opinion question of you, Tyler, and this is like a mini discussion. There's a
Okay.
couple levels in Hook where they do the auto scroll where you have to keep up with the screen,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
How do you feel about these? These are common in Mario,
Yeah, I
a lot
wanna
of
say
games.
Mario 3 is like the first Mario that did that.
Mhm.
Um, they're they're very cool as a way to create a sense of urgency in a game. I guess I don't have any strong feelings one way or the other. I think A level can be good or bad, with or without that mechanic. So like if the mechanic is in there and the level has been well designed around that mechanic, then I'm fine with it. If the level has not been well designed around that mechanic, then it feels bad. But that's not really a dig on the mechanic. That's just you gotta design the level for that, right? So
I
I don't
love
have a
that.
strong opinion either way.
That's a balanced approach because I loved the tension they created in Mario, but I would get so mad when I died to the screen as a
Oh,
kid.
really?
It would really bum me out. Yeah. This one does it pretty well because there's a couple times where you can get caught on like the mermaids and the platforms in the water. Like if you don't time it right, you can get stuck up against the wall in the water and you can't get out.
Mhm.
But most of the time they do a good job with this mechanic. I was just curious what you thought about it. So that's like really the only other thing I kind of want to talk about is the big boss fight, the ending boss fight against Captain Hook, because it's two phases, which is kind of different for like a platformer. I feel like in
Mhm.
the early '90s. So
Yeah.
you fight Hook on the front part. What's the front pole that comes out of the ship? Like that
The
part.
bow.
The that part. See, I'm pointing to it. The Lego on the Lego pirate
Oh,
ship
yeah,
above
yeah,
me.
yeah. I don't know
Yeah,
what the pole is called. I know the front of the ship is called the bow. I'm pretty
yeah.
sure.
So there's the
Nautical
pole.
terms.
Yeah, where are our nautical codex fans at? What's that part
Yeah.
called?
What's the Venn diagram of like nautical nerds and video game history nerds?
It's got to be pretty
Whoever's in the
close.
middle, we need you right now.
We got to have something in there, some sort of connection there. But that piece, it's hard to do. That piece is what you fight Hook on at first, and it seems like I actually remember like because I'm full disclosure, I played this game up to a certain point, and then I just watched a long play because I'm like I'm not going to be able to finish this in time if I don't watch a long play of someone playing it. You fight Hook on that first. And it seems like kind of a run of mill. He's just swinging. You just swing when he's not swinging, and that's it. And he takes like way more shots, like way more than three. Then and he kind of dies. And I'm like, was that it? Was that really it? And then that's when they do that cut scene where your kids are saved and Rufio comes over and then the pirate sword flies across screen, kills Rufio, and then the real fight begins with Hook. And he actually does a scorpion Mortal Kombat move with his hook and he shoots it out at you and you have to like dodge it. And the crazy part to me is he can shoot it diagonally up. Like he doesn't just shoot it in one direction. So it's actually kind of like the hardest fight. He can also block, which no enemy like I feel like really before was blocking, and he's the only one that can actually like block your attack. So you have to time it. You have to hit him as he's swinging at you. So there's like a kind of a gamble there with it. But I was
Wow.
like pretty impressed with this boss fight for a 1991 or 92 video game. I thought it was
Sounds
really great.
fun.
Yeah, and then it actually has pretty long cut scenes at the end and beginning, and it's a post credit scene as well, where Tinkerbell kind of talks to you and stuff, and you're like, oh, this is kind of nice. And so,
Teeing up the sequel to Hook.
yeah, I know, right? I wanted a Hook 2 so bad as a kid. Personally, I needed a Hook 2. I was a big fan of that movie, but I think they do a really good job of it, and I think the gameplay is worth it enough to make it like a fun game to try out and play. It also, again, it's not going to take you hours. It's going to take you like
It's a quick one.
an hour tops, probably, I mean, like probably 2 hours tops, really. I guess technically three, according to how long to beat. But I think most people could probably beat it in two if they really like sat down with it and tried their best there. But it's really fun. I enjoy it. Also, with an emulator with save states, you could just get through this game way faster too. Because I don't think how long to beat thinks about save states at
No,
all.
no. It's just relying on people reporting how long they took. So
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that you should definitely check this one out. Let's talk about development for a little bit here. It's not, again, not a lot of facts. I just want to touch on two things. First, that this game is mostly the exact same across the platforms we've discussed. The big one, though, is the Sega CD version does include FMV
like
video.
clips from the movie,
I don't know if they're clips from the movie. I couldn't figure out if it was clips from the movie or not, or if
that
it's
would
like
be a
another.
really good thing to put on the box. Imagine a video game in 1991 that's like has real clips from the movie.
That would be
Oh,
really cool. But the other thing, because I don't, this is what makes me think they don't have clips from the movie. There's voice acting in the Sega CD version, but they could not afford the actual actors. They had to do other voice actors. So I don't think the
classic
FMV is
video
from the
games.
movie. I think it's like other voice actors doing it and just kind of going for it.
Mhm.
So, but that's the extra part of the Sega CD version. Again, not the one I have experience with. I have entirely experienced the game through the eyes of the SNES. That's how I played it as a kid. That's how I played it now. I would just recommend to check it out if you're into that kind of thing. The other thing that I really want to touch on though is this game's music is fantastic. Like they did an amazing job. And I was sitting there like, I wonder who made the score of this game. And it was John Williams. John Williams did the score.
The score of the game.
John
Did he do
Williams'
the movie
score.
too?
Well, yeah, John Williams did the movie score. So they took his score from the movie and just made it into the game. There is additional music because it's like boss fight music and other stuff. So most of the music in the game, and I waited for the credits, is credited to John Williams because they used his compositions from the music and they turned it into like the chip tune, right?
Mhm.
There's
Okay.
additional music that was done by Tetsuya Furumoto, who I believe we've talked about before as doing music on a different game. I believe they've come up before. And then,
I'll do a quick Google.
yeah, do a quick Google. And then Katsunori Ujie, I think is how you say it, Ujie. And they both did the music additionally on this game. And then the music for John Williams was transcribed into chiptune by Takafumi Fujisawa. So it's like a 3-person team that really just knocked the music out of the park. And it's so good.
Okay. So Tetsuya Furumoto did only Hook in a game called Extra Innings, which must be a baseball game.
Oh my
That's it.
gosh.
According to
I just recognized
IMDb.
the name Tetsuya from something else. Maybe that's what it
Tetsuya
is.
Nomura is a very famous designer who did like all the everything Final Fantasy from 7
Yeah.
on for
Yeah,
pretty much.
that's
And
from your
Kingdom
Final
Hearts.
Fantasy episodes that you did, Tyler. That's really good. See, and that's what I thought it from. I was like, I could have sworn they were on the podcast. Different person, same
Mhm.
first name. Okay, but yeah, the music just knocks it out of the park, and I think anyone should check this game out for that too, as well. If you like video, or even just like find a soundtrack of it online. It's got to be on YouTube. Some of that's just the music from it, but it's pretty great. The legacy of this game, there really isn't like a lasting legacy to it, but it kind of made me wonder in the vein of like video game history if there's other Peter Pan games out there. There's got to be.
Have
Have you
trying to
ever heard
think
of
of
it?
like other Peter Pan related media that's come out.
Oh, like Disney, like the Disney Peter Pan is the only one I could think of. There was that weird movie with Hugh Jackman,
There was the
Pan.
Johnny. Oh, Pan? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, with Hugh Jackman's Captain Hook. You know what I'm talking about?
There was that. Wasn't there Johnny Depp Peter Pan thing too? Like it's about that. I think it's about that writer
That's
of the
Finding
story.
Neverland, isn't it?
Finding Neverland. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
But
more
like
of
I don't think
a
there's been like a.
talkie game, I feel like. Talkie movie, not a game. It's a movie.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's been any other Peter Pan media. Peter Pan in video games. Loud clacky keyboard. Category: Peter Pan video games. There are 3 of them. Hook, Peter Pan video game, Peter Pan and the Pirates, Peter Pan Adventures in Neverland. So we have Peter Pan the video game, 1984 for ZX Spectrum. I said it like
Yeah.
I'm not in America. I said ZX instead
I
of
mean,
ZX.
I'm impressed with your ability to be Mr. International is what we call you.
That's yes, that is what they call me.
Mhm.
Fox's Peter Pan and the Pirates was an NES game in 1991. I would assume that was probably released to try to capitalize on Hook.
Yeah, because Hook also again it has those beat 'em up, the beat 'em up arcade, and then the point and click adventure game, which I know nothing about.
Mhm.
So maybe we'll go down that road at some point if people really care about this thing. I again am picking this game solely for nostalgia's purposes. It's entirely my thing.
Yeah.
People are gonna be like, "What is Mike talking about? Why am I listening to this?" It doesn't matter. This is mine. That's what I
Yeah,
want to
well,
talk about
you
today.
can talk about whatever you want on your own podcast.
Thank you, Tyler. That's what I was looking for. It's just some validation, you know. So when I do a 3-hour deep dive into the 7-Up cool spot, we'll
This
get
is a
there.
7-part series. He's been working
Mhm.
real hard on it.
I talk about each individual cool spot, the 7 circles of cool spots. Well, with that though, like I think this was just a good thing to talk about with like the gold. Again, we've talked about it before. This golden age of 2D side-scrolling platformers that came out with like movies like Lion King,
Mhm.
Aladdin, Hook. There's a bunch more of them, and that's kind of what made me want to do this today. I also want to do a series on Super Star Wars, all 3 games,
Ooh,
because
yeah.
those were the opposite of Hook, as in extremely difficult video games that were extremely unforgiving. And I think it would be fun to talk about those. Did you play Super Star Wars at all?
A little bit back in the day, but
Yeah,
not recently, no.
very difficult games. So maybe we'll venture there again if we're going to go back to platformer land in the early 90s. But Tyler, what you been playing?
Boy, it's getting to the end of the year, so work has been pretty crazy for me in my line of work. So I haven't had a ton of time to play video games, and I've been kind of just working on some other projects when I have free time. But I did put some time into Persona 5 Tactica, still like chipping away at that. But that's kind of it, really. Mostly just Persona, and then working on some just other stuff. So
Nice.
taking a little break from video games, but not a huge break.
That's
Just,
okay.
I finished the Spider-Man game. It's like I'm gonna do that, but I have some of that. I still need to finish Super Mario Wonder. I got to get on Mario RPG, also the remake. Really excited for that. I bought that and I just haven't played it yet. So
I'm holding off on buying anything new. I need to beat other stuff first. That's what I'm trying to do right now.
I'm with you on that. But yeah, what about you? What have you been playing?
So I beat Starfield.
Nice.
I went to New Game Plus, their version of New Game Plus. Spoiler territory. Should we go into spoiler territory? It's kind of a really new game. Maybe not. No, we're not going to. I just beat it. I would say I went into New Game Plus, and that's about it. And I rolled
they
credits.
justify New Game Plus with the story reasons, right?
They do, yes. And that's something I have not a gripe about, but I would like to talk about at some point because I don't know. I don't know if it landed, is what I'm trying to say.
We should do a discussion episode on New Game Plus sometime.
Ooh, I'm writing it on the list right afterward. Right after this, I'll write it on the list.
Okay.
Good stuff. Okay. The other game, though, that I am playing, and I've gotten now to Ganon, is Tears of the Kingdom. I'm at the final boss, but I'm wondering if I want to go do all those shrines because, I need those hearts because I'm bad at video games. So I need those hearts.
Well, you get a sense of pride and accomplishment for taking out all those shrines too, and that's
really
fun.
do.
I really enjoyed that in Breath of the Wild. I need to get back on my Tears of the Kingdom grind, but I just
not feeling it.
This hasn't grabbed me.
See, I like doing the shrines because I think the puzzles in the shrines are some of my favorite parts of Zelda.
Yeah.
Of the Tears of the Kingdom. Of Breath of the Kingdom. Tears of the Wild
puzzles, I think. Tears.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why. That's why I love them so much. Tears of the Wild would be a really good name for a video game, by the way. Just throwing it out there. Any game designers listening to this, Tears of the Wild. So, but yeah, I'm enjoying it. I think I'm going to do all the shrines and all the routes, the light routes too. I kind of want to map the whole depths. I think it'd be kind of cool to see everything there. And I'm enjoying it. I don't know if it's kind of like Pokemon Violet, where I don't know if I'm ready to do that shrine grind.
Mm-hmm.
So I might hold off a bit and play like Advanced Wars and beat that. Because I beat the first one in the reboot camp, and then I want to beat the second one. And that's a fun game to play. Just kind of chilling out during the day is a fun game to play.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Good handheld sit on the porch or something.
It's so good for that. It's so, yeah, because it's also really good for like a plane. I think I've talked about this before, but Advanced Wars Reboot Camp is a solid Switch game for a plane, just like Mario plus Rabbids, because it's like kind of like tactical. It's turn-based. It's not like gonna take too much of your energy to like really focus on it. You can like take time. You can put it down. Get yourself a ginger ale. I drink ginger ale on planes. Get that. Live your best life. Okay. So with that though, Tyler, things you can do to support the podcast. You ready?
I'm ready. What can I do to support the podcast?
You can go to codexpodcast.net. Spoilers, right now it might be down. There might be a problem with it. I'm working on it. I'm going to fix it later today. A library I was using became deprecated. So I'm going to fix that later today. But that has like all of our contact forms on there, our Trello boards, our Twitter pages, our all the sources. I always forget to say this. I put our sources on there, like all our books we've done, like they're links to like the websites they sold, or like Goodreads is on there as well. So you can check that out too.
Yeah. And also link to our Discord is on there.
Yes, that's the big one. The Discord link is on there. Yeah. We love to see you in Discord. We try to be in there as much as we can. And then other than that, the Codex History Podcast at gmail.com is where you can also just send us a direct email if you don't want to go to our website. Other than that, though, Tyler, would you like to say goodbye to everybody?
I would. Goodbye, everybody.